The rain in Vancouver has a sound all its own. It's not a violent storm, just a persistent, heavy sigh from the sky. It was a Tuesday in November, and that sound was the only thing I could focus on as I stared at my own reflection in the gallery window. A younger, thinner me stared back, my portfolio case clutched in my hand like a shield. "It's just bleak, Leo." The gallery owner, a woman named Genevieve, with severe bangs and a kind but firm smile, had said, "There's no joy here. People want to hang art that lifts them up. These are beautifully composed, technically flawless, but they're heavy." My photos, black and white shots of the city's forgotten corners, the pewing paint on a fishing boat in Steveston, the deep-etched lines on a man's face in the downtown East Side, the chaotic grace of crows rising from a dumpster behind a Granville Street nightclub. To me, they weren't bleak. They were true. I walked out of her Gastown gallery, the tinkling bell above the door sounding like a final, tiny laugh. The rain started to soak through the shoulders of my jacket. I didn't head home. I couldn't. It was Tuesday, which meant family dinner at my parents' house in North Van. The one night of the week I couldn't avoid. The house smelled of roasted chicken and my mother's anxious potpourri. My father was at the head of the table, his engineer's hands clean and capable. Resting on either side of his plate, my older brother Mark was already recounting a triumphant sale. A glass box of a house in West Van with an ocean view, sold for $500,000 over asking. "And the commission," he said, winking at me, "is enough to buy a whole lot of camera film, little brother." "How was the gallery, Leo?" my mother asked, her voice laced with that hopeful, fragile tone she used whenever my hobby came up. I took a slow sip of water. She passed. My father sighed, the sound of a man burdened by disappointment. He didn't look at me, but at his cutlery. "Leo, we've talked about this. It's a fine hobby, a great hobby, but you're 24. You need a career path, something stable." "Photography isn't stable, Dad," Mark chimed in, leaning back in his chair, the picture of success in his tailored shirt. "It's what people do on weekends. You're good at it, sure, but it's not a job. I could use someone to take photos of my listings. Professional-looking stuff. You'd be great at it. I'd even pay you." The offer hung in the air, thick and condescending. The idea of using my eye, my soul, to make empty million-dollar houses look appealing felt like a violation. I saw my father nod in agreement. This was their solution. A neat, tidy box to put me in. Leo, the real estate photographer. "Thanks, Mark," I said, my voice quiet but steady. "But that's not what I do." "What is it you do then?" my father asked, finally looking at me. His eyes weren't angry, just tired. "You take pictures of sad things. Who pays for that? Who wants that?" "I do," I said. The words came out before I could stop them. "I want that." Mark laughed. Not a mean laugh, just a dismissive one. The laugh of a big brother who still saw me as a kid playing with toys. "Okay, Leo, you do you. But don't come to me when the rent is due and all you have are pretty pictures of puddles." I felt something inside me lock into place that night. A cold, hard certainty. They didn't see me. They saw a problem to be solved, a failure to be managed. The hurt was a physical thing, a tight band around my chest. But beneath it, a sliver of dignity remained. I finished my chicken, said my goodbyes, and walked out into the rain again. I didn't go back to my apartment. I drove to Stanley Park and sat in my car, watching the distant lights of the cargo ships in the harbor. They were going somewhere, and I knew, with a clarity that cut through all the noise, that I had to as well. 2 weeks later, I was gone. I sold my car and most of my belongings. I bought a one-way ticket to Bangkok with the little money I had. I left a note for my parents. I told them I loved them, but I had to go find a place where my work could speak for itself. My brother called me the day before I left. "Are you serious?" he'd asked, his voice a mix of disbelief and annoyance. "You're throwing your life away to go be a tourist? What are you running from?" "I'm not running from anything," I'd said, looking at my camera bag packed and ready by the door. "I'm running towards something." He didn't understand. I didn't expect him to. The next 8 years were a blur of motion and desperation. The struggle was real, and it was brutal. I learned that being a freelance photojournalist was less about art and more about hustle. I took any job I could get. I shot temple ceremonies in Cambodia, market life in Delhi, corporate events in Hong Kong. I slept in hostels that smelled of mildew and stale beer. I ate street noodles until my stomach burned. I was robbed once in Manila, losing 2 of my best lenses. I was lonely. There were countless nights I'd lie awake, the drone of a foreign city outside my window, and I'd think about the quiet green dampness of home. I'd think about my family's laughter, even the condescending kind, and feel a pang of homesickness so sharp it felt like a blade. I emailed them sporadically, short, simple updates. My mother would reply with long, worried messages about my health and safety. My father and brother would add a line at the end: "Stay safe. Let us know when you're done with your trip." They still saw it as an extended vacation, but slowly things started to change. I pitched a story to a small online magazine about the sand dredgers on the Mekong River. They bought it. The pay was terrible, but seeing my photos published with my name under them was a jolt of electricity. I used that piece to pitch another and another. My eye, once trained on the quiet melancholy of Vancouver, found a new focus: the human stories hidden in plain sight, the ones nobody else was telling. My break came in the wake of a typhoon in the Philippines. I was already in the region and managed to get to a remote island chain that had been cut off. The big news agencies hadn't arrived yet. For 3 weeks, I lived with the villagers, documenting their resilience amidst the total devastation. I didn't just take pictures of the wreckage. I took pictures of the faces. A father rebuilding his home with salvaged wood, his daughter's tiny hand on his back, an old woman carefully washing a single mud-caked family photograph, a group of boys playing basketball with a rusty, bent rim and a makeshift ball. The series, which I called The Quiet After, was picked up by a major international wire service. It ran everywhere. The photos were heavy. They were bleak, and people wanted them. They needed them. From there, the doors started to open. An assignment for The Guardian, a feature in the New York Times Magazine. I spent 6 months documenting the lives of nomadic herders in Mongolia as their way of life was threatened by climate change. I spent a year on the front lines of a protest movement in South America. My work wasn't about joy. It was about truth and grit and the astonishing endurance of the human spirit. One day, an email arrived from a name I hadn't thought about in years. It was from the Vancouver Art Gallery. They were planning a major retrospective exhibit. They wanted it to be my work, a homecoming. I flew back into Vancouver on a gray day in October. The air smelled of rain and cedar and salt, a scent so familiar it made my chest ache. The mountains, shrouded in low-hanging clouds, were exactly as I remembered them. The city was shinier, taller, more glass towers scraping the sky, but the soul of it, the gray, moody, beautiful soul, was the same. My family picked me up from the airport. They were older. My father's hair was completely white. Mark had a few lines around his eyes. They were awkwardly proud. They hugged me, patted me on the back, and talked about my flight. They had seen my work online, of course. They'd told their friends, my son, the famous photographer, but I could tell they still didn't really get it. They saw the bylines, not the photos. The opening night of the exhibition was a surreal experience. The gallery was vast, with high white walls and polished concrete floors. And on those walls were my photos, blown up to incredible sizes. A Mongolian herdsman's face, a landscape of raw, windswept plains, looked back at me. A shot from the typhoon. The old woman with the photograph filled an entire wall, her expression of fierce, loving grief dominating the room. The gallery was packed. People in black tie attire drifted from one image to the next, speaking in hushed, reverent tones. My family arrived late. My mother wore a new dress. My father and brother were in suits. They looked uncomfortable, out of their element. I watched them from across the room as they entered the main hall. They stopped. Frozen. Mark, the man who sold pristine empty